Alright, I'm Haley, this is Max. We're going to talk about Afghanistan, and this is the only visual we have. So we're just going to kind of like walk you through our process of research, kind of, talk about it. And so basically we had the 50 words, I just made a word cloud with them. And so these are kind of the ones that we thought of. And it was interesting, the way we did our research that I kind of figured out at the end is like what America assumes Afghanistan to be, but then like what we actually discovered, which is very different. So you'll see that some of these words are like kind of, like I feel like pretty typical of what any of us would say. Hostile and like war and all that stuff. So it was kind of interesting to see them put together like this.
There should be a pamphlet going around to the rest of the class, but basically, if you can't see, this is a flag of Afghanistan, and like the U.S., each color represents a different thought. And so green represents like vegetables and like all their we'll think agriculture and like all their greens and everything like that. The red actually lines up with like bloodshed and past wars that they remember, and then the black, which for most countries as well represents uncertainty in the future. And then for the emblem, it's actually think of it sort of like how the U.S. dollar bill has "In God We Trust." Their emblem basically states, and it says, "Allah is the one and only true God, and his Muhammad is his only prophet." Basically, is what it says on it, and then there's a very small little emblem on side that has something that depicts that message.
Yeah. And then there's pictures on the back side of the pamphlet too of like our initial images, like what we thought of when we thought of Afghanistan. So there's one of like September 11th, which is I feel like pretty typical, and then some other like war things. But an initial picture I had that I didn't include on the pamphlet, you probably can't, I don't know if you see it, it's this beach picture. And the last fall, in one of my leadership classes, we got to work with the women who did this program last summer. And my woman was actually from Afghanistan. Her name was Miriam. And so last fall we like Skyped them a few times and kind of talked to them about their experience for the summer, which is part of the reason I took this class. So I talked to her, not recently, it's been a couple months, but she like does some really, really cool stuff. She travels like around like the Middle East and teaches men actually, which is like not very good, or common for her to do, but she like teaches them about different. She does like little kind of, they're like little workshops about like inequality and like really cool things that she learned here. So I just thought that was cool that she's like taking this stuff from last summer and using it in Afghanistan.
And it's also nice that AJ and Asia went before us because in terms of geography, Pakistan also borders Afghanistan and it's surrounded by Iran, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan. And so that was nice that you gave us a little context there. And it's one of the bigger countries in that surrounding area, and it's mostly desert, and it's a lot of countries underdeveloped. And there's like, as I was reading some of them, very discerning fact. It's their capital is Kabul. And that's the third largest city in terms of population. And what I read was that actually about 85% of the capital is without electricity right now because of like all the civil wars, and this has been going on since like the mid 90s. And it's a huge concern. Like you were talking about the distance in classes, and basically only the upper class currently like have like functioning like water systems, sewer systems, and electricity. So it's a very disturbing thought. And along with that, we're going to touch on it in a little bit, but like because of the Civil War, women's rights have just completely been on a spiraling downfall. They're really trying to do their best to try and get some more equality, but due to all the war and everything, women have certainly been devalued.
Yeah, which is cool that Miriam does, well, like what she does.
Right.
But I'm going to talk about two rituals, kind of. So the first one is etiquette, and I just found it interesting, like socially, whenever they enter someone's household, you have to remove your shoes, which I think we pretty much do in America. I feel like it's like a respect thing, but there, if you like don't do it, they like shun you. So it's like you better take your shoes off. I don't know. And when you eat, you sit cross-legged, which is very interesting, and you can only eat with your hands. So they don't have utensils, so they just eat everything. And it's a very similar diet to Pakistan. They do a lot of rice and all of that kind of stuff, vegetables, things like that. But there's a hand washing ceremony. If you're at someone's house eating, there's like a ceremony you have to do to cleanse your hands before you can eat anything. And so you like dip your hands in the water and say like a prayer thing, and then you can eat. So I thought that was interesting. And what else did I have? Oh, when you meet someone, you always give them a handshake, if they're of the same gender. But men and women do not look each other in the eye, and they don't really talk to one another. And so therefore they don't handshake, because once again, the women are not there. Inequality is bad. And what else? There was something else. Oh, gifts. You're supposed to bring a gift if you go to someone's house.
Yeah.
So it can be.
And going off what you said about the gifts, another thing we saw that was very interesting. In terms of weddings, when they get married, what they do is basically most of the weddings are arranged. And so basically not the extended family, but like the immediate family plus like some of their closer friends goes over to the fiance's or potential bride's house, and they have like a meeting or something. And so the way that the custom worked was the fiance bride or the to-be potentially puts like an item in one of her hands, and either her mate tries to like remove it from her hand, and if he can't, then his mother has to like promise the bride to be like a very nice present. And it was like, it's just like a funny little cultural thing that they do, that it's like sort of like we can like equate it to like a baby shower, like their type of baby shower. And then and one of the other things that they did that was really interesting that I thought was just kind of on the opposite scale was their funeral rituals were very, very interesting. They were very different from ours. And at the same point, they were the same, but basically they're dressed in all white. They're like washed down in holy water. Then they also have the immediate family come in and they help. They do 6 feet as well for their graves. They dig it up, they put them in there, and they also do, I know, in a lot of cultures in the Middle East, they take dirt as a sign of respect and they sprinkle it on top of the coffin. And they also have a couple more prayers that they say after as well.
Yeah, then one more thing with the weddings that I thought was interesting is before they can so after they get married and they go through the ceremony, the night before there's like a huge henna party,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's like a really big cultural thing for the bride and like the bridal party to be henna like everywhere. And so like some of the pictures I saw, it was just like you couldn't even see her skin because there was so much henna. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then before they can like move in together, the bride so they come back to the house. And then before the bride can like step down onto the property, they have to sacrifice a sheep like under her feet before she can like step down. And then she steps down, and then before she can walk in the door of the house, she's like hammer and nail. I don't know. It's a good omen. So we don't really have those. So I thought that was interesting.
And going off of what they're talking about henna, they also do with the henna, all the women do it, and then it's also like the idea like a bouquet in our culture is like they have like a little bit of henna left, and it's supposed to be like a good luck sign if like you pass it off to a younger woman who hasn't been married yet who potentially wants to be. So that was I thought that was kind of cool to compare it to. And then some of the bigger social issues that we came across while we were doing our research, we touched on them very briefly, but there's a huge difference. It's a very masculine-dominated culture, and so, like we said earlier, the inequality of women is just it's very, very crazy. When I was reading about it, there's a lot of actually like violence towards women, and they don't have anywhere that they can really communicate these issues to because there's no real institutional government support, and that's something that they're really trying to fix. Because I can't remember the number, I think it was around like 1,200, but like an astonishingly large number of women have like tried to come forward and communicate like abuse between like a partner or anything like that, and they just have no way of like making it better, I guess.
Yeah, they have the highest percentage in the world of missing women relative to the women's population. So they just disappear.
And and then also the other huge social issue that we touched on that's causing a lot of distress is the Civil War, and it's been going on for so long, and it's causing a lack of electricity. And like another thing that I saw, which is really, really interesting in their culture, is one of the ways that they like seek out retribution is like through revenge and bloodshed, and it's like a very like thing that's been deeply ingrained in their culture. So if like they have been wronged in the past and they're gonna try and like come back and spite you, and it's like something that's ingrained in their culture. I thought that was very interesting, especially in the past events that we have seen too. Yeah, and that's if you guys have any questions for us, we're here to answer them.
So with the weddings, what is their typical wedding attire? Is it colorful? Is it white? Or?
Yeah, so I put a few pictures on the pamphlet of it, but it's like it's like a dress, like a typical. It's like an Afghanistan, very not glit. It was like kind of what we would consider glitzy, but it's like their cultural dress. And the bride's is always much more. Much more fancy, but all the women in the party like dress into the cultural.
Do they have a veil, or?
I don't know if they have something that's like a veil, but I don't know if it's a veil.
Yeah.
I know.
But they wear like a headdress.
On the headdress, yeah.
What type of government do they have?
That is a good question. I do not know for certain because I want to say that they have like basically very similar to Pakistan, where they like I don't know if exactly like they have like one sort of like a figurehead, and then they have like a government around them. Just that's sort of like my impression of it. I don't know exactly what the title of their type of government is, but I can look into it. Is there any other questions?
All right, thank you.
Yeah.